Naruto flashed straight to his parents' home. He needed something to calm down, something to focus on. His mind was in a haze, with all his rational thoughts and logic buried beneath a storm of emotions he could make no sense out of. This was the first time he was feeling something like this, and his gut instinct was understandably confused. Fortunately, he had Kurama to talk some sense into him. Naruto, calm down. Take it slowly, step by step. He rumbled in a calm manner, trying to work the panic out of Naruto's system by pushing some of his yang chakra through. He could feel Naruto trying to think this through logically, as he had done with every situation before. Naruto registered Kurama's shouts, and upon hearing the annoyance in his voice, he forcefully shook his head. He took deep breaths, letting each one out slowly. It took him over 5 minutes to calm down enough so he could listen to Kurama. He slowly sat down on the living room sofa, right in front of his parents' portrait. He put his chin on top of his joint hands and listened. "Alright, I'm calm now, sorry about that. I just didn't know what to do," he said in a neutral tone, with only a hint of confusion in it. Kurama scoffed, "As you should be. I really don't see what's there to panic about. You should be jumping in ecstasy instead, having finally had your first kiss with a girl." Naruto frowned a bit. "Maybe you're right. However, even if I kissed her, she is going to be my enemy on the day of the finals. I don't know what I would do. As a shinobi of the leaf, it is my sworn duty to destroy the enemies of the leaf. However, I know that I won't be able to bring myself to kill Temari. And I can't even imagine the treatment a prisoner of Konoha gets." Kurama raised an eyebrow. "What you need to do is slow down. It is not up to you to decide what happens to them. That's the job of the Hokage. Your job is to simply stop them from completing their mission, by any means necessary." Naruto thought about it, weighing Kurama's words intensely. He was right, he simply had to stop the Sand from achieving their goal. He figured that he might have to take some lives on the day of the finals, but he could choose to spare some. He got up, his keen mind slowly working out the various possibilities and scenarios as he made his way to the simulation. He already knew that Gaara was the biggest part of the opposition's plan, so he would have to neutralize him by any means. If he could stop Gaara, there is no other trump card that he could think of that Suna can fall back on. He could choose to spare Temari, as she can't do anything on her own. Her other brother was easy to handle as well. Based on his observations, Kankuro was a skilled puppeteer, but he was also a bit of an idiot. Both were a very small part of the entire invasion, the pawns on the chessboard. He removed his resistance seals and set the simulation to level 6. He stepped inside the room and activated the simulation with the seal sequence. As his opponent formed in front of him, he settled into his stance, eyes steely. As soon as the command was given, he dashed forward in a flash step. "I will figure out what to do." XXXXXXX. The fight was tough, easily the toughest that Naruto had ever fought. The bruises and sore muscles were the definite proof of that. He winced as he rolled his shoulder, trying to relax it a bit as he exited the room. He had given it his utmost effort from the beginning, trying to end it as quickly as possible. However, he wasn't surprised at all when he was parried blow for blow, jab for jab. Neither managed to gain the upper hand on the other for a whole of 15 minutes. Naruto could not hit his opponent, but he made sure that his opponent couldn't hit him either. It soon became clear that he won't be able to gain the upper hand if he continued like this, so he activated the blazing hands technique. At first, it looked like he had gained a slight advantage, but he was forced onto the defensive when his opponent copied the blazing hands and used it against him just as effectively. Naruto absently fingered the small, burned hole in his jacket as he walked up the basement. The blazing hands had caught him off guard for a moment, which is why there was a burnt hole. But he had managed to put up a successful defense, all the while trying to think up of something that would give him an edge in the fight. The fact that there was no pattern to identify did not help at all. It all came down to this: the only way he was beating this opponent was by catching him off guard, and capitalizing on that hard and fast, give the opponent no time to recover or think up of a strategy. However, it had to be something completely new. Something totally out of the box. It did not escape his observation that the moves he fought in the previous level did not work on the next. So he waited, all the while defending himself from his opponent. It took him the better part of 20 minutes to think up of something that even remotely had a chance of working. Blazing Hands was somewhat based on the tree walking exercise. You have to maintain a constant amount of chakra on your hands or feet, however, instead of it being normal chakra, it has to be Katan. Katan was fire, and fire was weak to water, and vice versa. With this in mind, Naruto improvised. Instead of maintaining Katan chakra, he changed the nature to Suiton. It wasn't difficult at all, if he didn't count the constant attacking on his person. It was no surprise that the Blazing Hands technique of his opponent was neutralized. But water nature chakra had no offensive capability in taijutsu. But his goal was something else entirely. He maintained the change for only 10 seconds, after which he switched back to Katan. He smirked when he saw his attacks getting neutralized, the same way he neutralized them. His opponent was using Suiton to counter his Blazing Hands. This was the chance he was waiting for. Without a moment of waste, he had flipped away and charged back. He used the potential of his danger sense to the maximum, slowing down his perception, waiting for the exact moment to strike. When his punch towards the stomach was predictably blocked by a fist, he struck. Red lightning danced across the body of his opponent, sending his electrical impulses into overdrive and spasming his muscles. Naruto had gathered a small amount of his Riton chakra in his punch. And since the opponent was using Suiton to counter Blazing Hands, the water only boosted the effect of electricity on his body. Naruto seized his chance. He would have to finish this in one move, otherwise he risked giving his opponent a chance to adapt. He backflipped, enforcing his right heel with chakra to amplify the damage. His opponent went flying in the air, and Naruto smirked when he heard the telltale sound of a bone cracking. But he didn't stop his movements. He jumped a bit and spun counterclockwise, timing his jump such that his left foot made a painful contact with the opponent's gut, sending him flying back. His back struck the wall hard, his head bumping back as well due to momentum. But Naruto was already flash-stepping forward as soon as his kick had ended. He had gathered a large amount of lightning in his fist, making tiny sparks go off in random directions. He struck his fist right in the chest where the heart is. It went right through it, emerging on the other side. The Riton chakra burned away any blood that would have gathered on the fist if it were a real opponent. As it wasn't, the simulation ended, signifying his victory. The sheer amount of lightning in his hand had given him a high amount of piercing power. The power to cut through almost anything. Naruto did not know, but he had unintentionally recreated something similar to the Chidori, the technique that Kakashi was infamous for. No wonder he didn't get back up, he thought as he prepared to flash away. The simulation had ended after that. His purpose was achieved, he had managed to distract himself from the whirlpool of panic he was going through. Now that his mind was focused enough, he could logically think this through on what he would do on the day of the invasion. And he had decided what he would do. For now, he needed to rest. He had an invasion to prepare for. XXXXXXX Naruto was sleeping comfortably, a peaceful smile on his face. The sun peeked over the horizon slowly, and as soon as the first rays of the sun touched his face, his eyes fluttered open. He blinked his eyes several times to clear the sleep out of them. He then put his hands behind his head and just stared at the ceiling, attempting to piece together the facts he knew. Okay, here are the facts. Orochimaru attacked us in the second phase, making it clear that he is after Sasuke for some reason. From what I learned from Temari, the Sand and the Sound are planning a combined invasion on the Leaf on the day of the finals. So it's not just that the Sand and the Sound shinobi will be fighting each other, but the Kage will fight as well. Gigi is up against the Kazekage, and possibly Orochimaru as well. That snake just want to see the Leaf destroyed, given that he was denied the title of the Yondaime by Gigi. The fact that Gigi only cemented the fact that he would never become Hokage by declaring him a missing nin is only the icing on the cake. He wants to see the Leaf utterly destroyed. Naruto frowned heavily at his thoughts. The Leaf was in a very bad situation. He knew that Gigi must have organized his forces accordingly upon learning of the invasion 2 days ago, so he only needed to worry about himself. It was finally time to cut loose. He was ready to show the world who he really is, though it will be amusing to see whether the world is ready to know who I really am, Naruto smirked. He completed his morning rituals and was waiting for his clone to finish making breakfast. Today he would be resting entirely, so he could fight in peak condition tomorrow. Which means he had ample amount of time to come up with a plan on how to deal with Gaara. He doubted it was simple enough to get close to Gaara to apply the 5 elements seal, for his absolute defense was nothing to laugh at. The clone was grumbling about slave drivers when he served breakfast to Naruto. Naruto proceeded to dispel the clone while he ate the pancakes. He began thinking of ways to beat Gaara as he slowly ate his breakfast. Taijutsu was out of the question if what Gaara did to Lee was anything to go by. Genjutsu was a useless option to use against a Jinchuriki, for the beast inside them would release the illusion for them. That left ninjutsu and fuinjutsu. Gaara primarily used sand, which was a glaring weakness for Naruto to exploit. Naruto knew how well Gaara could control his sand, but he doubted he could control it well enough when it got soaked in water. Wet sand was heavy. Fire was only good to use if it was hot enough to turn the sand to glass. He could use lightning, but he preferred if it didn't come to that. He would douse Gaara in so much water he would be hard-pressed to find enough sand that he could control. Fuinjutsu was something he could use to a great effect. A chakra absorption barrier would effectively trap and drain Gaara of his chakra until he dropped unconscious. But that presented another problem. Kurama had told him that the moment Gaara falls asleep, Shikaku would seize control and get free. So he would have to deal with a bijou. Thank God for the fox summons, he thought as he washed his plates. He dried them and went back to his room. Gazing in the mirror, he saw his hair and sighed wistfully. A second later, a clone popped into existence, already knowing what to do. He picked up a blade and scissors, and set about to cutting the original's hair. Tears of regret flowed out from his eyes. Why are you cutting your hair, Prime? It is such fine hair. Naruto turned in confusion, why are you complaining? The clone scowled, I know what you want to do with your hair, and I say it's idiotic because we would look like idiots. Naruto snorted, who says you have an option? The clone grumbled as he set to cutting the hair, while Naruto remained on guard, ready to dispel the clone in case he tried to shave him bald. 15 minutes later, Naruto gazed at himself in the mirror, smiling as he saw his new hairstyle. He even had his whiskers removed, 4 patches of hair, with a pattern that he had hardly looked good on anyone. He had cut his ponytail, causing his hair to fall around and making 2 jaw-length, spiky ear tails on either sides of his head. He experimentally lifted his right hand and spiked his head forwards. He smiled when the hair seemed to actually spike forwards and stay like that. People are going to get a heart attack tomorrow, he smirked. He went into the bathroom and took a quick shower. I have to prepare some backup for Gigi, for he may have to face the Kazekage and Orochimaru at the same time, he thought as he wiped himself dry. What do you have in mind? The sudden deep baritone caused him to blink once. About time you woke up. I was beginning to get worried when you didn't respond to my thinking earlier. Kurama scoffed, you're about 10,000 years too young to worry about me. Anyways, what do you have in mind? Putting on his clothes, he scoffed in return and replied, I'm only a genin. I can only prepare a few hundred shadow clones, nothing else. Kurama thought for a few moments and said, you underestimate your shadow clones. Don't forget, you are a decently skilled mortal of your age. He gracefully ignored the snort from his host, and as such, shadow clones of your caliber can act as a great support for anyone. If you say so, Naruto absently replied as he dressed up as usual. He looked at his hair in the mirror, noting the way in which it formed a spiky mess on his head. He arranged it so it was spiked forward on top of his head. He wondered what to do about his ear tails. He knew that his father, too, had jaw-length bangs on either sides of his head. He could replicate that, but he really didn't want his hair sticking around his face if it got wet with water. He could tie the bangs under his headband, but then it would still stick randomly when wet. What to do, what to do, what to do? It's quite rare to see someone like you, who never pays attention to irrelevant things, fussing over your hair, Kurama slyly commented. Naruto scowled, it's a relevant concern, okay? And when did I ask for your opinion on this anyways? You didn't, I was simply stating a fact, the reply was swiftly delivered. Anyways, I have something that you can try. A bit old style, but you might do some justice to it. 5 minutes later, Naruto was looking over his new hairstyle. You know Kurama, this actually looks good on me. You do have good advice sometimes. The beast snarled in annoyance, you sure have some nerve making fun of me like that. Naruto smirked but said nothing, further aggravating the bijou within. He had tied his bangs in the middle with bandages, and then tied his headband over the bangs. He grabbed 2 blank scrolls and his sealing supplies. He felt for the marker he had left on the training spot where Jiraiya trained for the last 3 weeks. He was gone in a flash. Naruto appeared in the clearing, spreading out his senses and confirming if he was truly alone or not. When he had confirmed, he sat down and opened one of the scrolls. Taking out his brush and ink, he started writing seals for a prisoner containment scroll, with a slight alteration. In just under a minute, he had completed writing down the sealing sequence. He inspected it for any mistakes, then nodded upon finding none. Standing up, he made a half-ram. Around 200 shadow clones popped into existence. Alright, I want you divide into 2 groups of 100. Hi! For a second, Naruto feared that the sound of 200 people simultaneously shouting would draw someone's attention. He sensed for any foreign chakra signatures, but found none. Nonetheless, he had to do this quickly. It took him just under 10 minutes, but he managed to seal 1 group of clones into the scroll. Normally, a prisoner scroll is made for dead people who have no chakra. Also, it is made only for 1 person. So Naruto had to tweak the seals a bit so that the amount of chakra that was shaped into his 100 shadow clones did not get disturbed in any way. Also, he also tweaked the seals to allow solid 100 constructs to safely get sealed. He exhaled a breath and did the same with the other 100. In 20 minutes, he had prepared a backup for himself and Gigi. Each backup worth 100 shadow clones. Alright, my work is done for today. Kurama, will my reserves be back to full by tomorrow? Easily. Leave it to me. I might even be able to expand them a bit. Naruto nodded, pleased with the development. All that was left is to wait for tomorrow. XXXXXXXTemari watched as her sensei paced the room in agitation. She glanced over to the other occupants of the room. Kankuro was cleaning his puppets, but kept a wary eye on their sensei, as if unnerved by his recent behavior. Gaara was just simply staring out of the window, arms crossed. No one knew what Gaara was thinking all the time, but it wasn't that hard to guess that he was bloodthirsty. All this time, there had been no one who Gaara had managed to kill, aside from the second phase of the exams. He was getting restless, and that spelled danger for all of them. Temari thought back to the events of last night and had to vehemently fight off the blush that threatened to cover her entire face in red. That was her first kiss, and it couldn't have been any better. The way they had moved against each other was just mesmerizing. But then the memories of what had happened before their kiss came up, and Temari found it easier to beat back the blush. She had planned to tell her sensei about her being ambushed, but was dumbfounded when Baki told her that they may have already been discovered. There was a loose end untied. Some Konoha shinobi had been spying on Baki's secret meeting with their ally. Baki had almost managed to finish him off, but the shinobi was rescued by someone. Someone so fast that all Baki had managed to see was a blonde blur and a blue flash. Which meant that Temari didn't need to tell him if they had already been discovered. Baki was getting worried about the next day. The Kazekage had told him that they would be proceeding with the invasion no matter what. So far, the Konoha forces had not shown any signs that they knew about the invasion. But he had a bad feeling in his gut, and his entire shinobi career had told him to always trust his gut. He had no choice but to ignore it and follow the orders of his leader. XXXXXXX morning arrived sooner than Naruto thought. He got up, thinking about what would happen today. Today, 2 things were sure to happen. He was not just going to beat Niji, no, that would be too light of a punishment for what he did to Hinata. He would show him just how little fate meant to him. He was going to utterly humiliate the Hyuga. The chances of him winning were already in his favor with his lack of a chakra network, but he would put effort for Niji. The other thing was the invasion, something that scared Naruto a bit. So many people could die, and those people would not just be the enemies, but his comrades as well. He would do whatever he could to protect his comrades, even if it meant putting himself in the line of fire. He shook his head, wiping that line of thought immediately. He would fight like a shinobi today, fast, deceptive, and ruthless. He already had his plan on how to beat Gaara, whether they crossed paths in the finals or on the battlefield. Gaara would either lose or die. He personally preferred if it didn't come to the second choice. Getting up, he quickly got ready. He checked and double-checked his hip pouches and holster, nodding when he saw they were fully stocked with what he needed. He put the backup scrolls in the pouches as well, reminding himself to give one of them to Gigi. He tied his headband around his head and tied his hair just like yesterday. He smirked when he saw he looked almost like a mini-me of his father. Today would be marked as the reveal of the legacy of Yondaime Hokage. XXXXXXX. The village was in a buzz, looking livelier than usual, many people noted. However, there was reason to be. Today was the day of the Chunin finals. People chatted happily as they made their way to the stadium, talking about who would win and who they would place their bets on. Of course, most of the buzz was about the last Uchiha. Many people were sure that the last Uchiha would no doubt emerge as the winner of the Chunin exams. It seemed as if the name of Uchiha automatically distinguished them as the strongest. Of course, people had reason to believe that as the last Uchiha was no other than the younger brother of Uchiha Itachi, the greatest prodigy to come out of the Uchiha clan. So, there was a lot of hope placed on youngest Uchiha to perform well. Many other people were rooting for the Hyuga genius, Hyuga Niji. The boy was hailed as the prodigy of the Hyuga clan, and there was no doubt as to how powerful the clan was. A prodigy of a powerful clan such as the Hyuga would no doubt be another favorable contender for the title of the winner of the Chunin exams. Naruto smirked as he made his way to the stadium, ensuring he was out of everyone's sight. It was important for him to not be seen by anyone. He wanted his entrance to be one worthy enough for the son of the Yondaime. As he made his way to the stadium, he paid close attention to what the people were saying. Most of them seemed damn sure of Sasuke's victory, while the others were in the favor of the Hyuga. Others were not even mentioned, which suited him just fine. The more he was ignored, more potent would be their guilt. He wanted the people of Konoha to know just who they were tormenting all this while. As the stadium came in sight, Naruto changed his route to arrive at the back of the stadium. Looking up, he saw the back wall of the stadium looming in front of him. There are still over 5 minutes before the announcements begin, he mused. He sat down to wait, and while he waited, he thought back to what Niji had said during the prelims. Flashback. Naruto watched in horror as Niji stood over the down form of Hinata, who was twitching in pain. No one can defy fate, Hinata-sama. Fate deemed you to be weak, that is why you lost to me. Flashback. And Naruto frowned as he thought back to those words. The amount of scorn Niji held for his sister was unreal. He whispered, "Why do you believe in fate so much, Niji? Just what happened to you to believe in bullshit such as that?" He was shook out of his thoughts when his keen ears picked up an announcement, "All final contestants please get down in the arena." Naruto took a deep breath and stood up. This is it, he told himself. Looking up, he saw that the top of the wall was about 10 meters above the branch of the tree he was standing on. He made a clone, who charged his legs with chakra and jumped, easily vaulting over the wall. XXXXXXX. Shikamaru looked as lazy as usual, but he closely observed his opponents. His opponent, the girl from Sand, looked every bit confident of her victory. But there was a small hint of apprehension in her eyes, which darted around the arena anxiously. He didn't bother looking at Shino. The guy was as stoic as a stone, and never gave anything away. The glasses and high collar of his jacket only made it difficult to read him. The puppeteer from Sand was just like his sister, but unlike her, there was no anxiousness radiating from him. The last guy from Sand was the one that bothered Shikamaru the most. The redhead was dangerous, no doubt about that. Although his expression was stoic, it was betrayed by the sheer amount of bloodlust he could feel from the guy. He still remembered what happened to Lee in the prelims. Gaara had not hesitated one bit to kill him with his sand. He was a seasoned killer, one that Shikamaru doubted anyone wanted to cross. From the minute twitches that he could see, Shikamaru deduced that he was eager to get on with the fighting. He looked over to Neji, who was Naruto's opponent. Regarded as the rookie of the year of his batch, Neji was a proclaimed genius of the Hyuga, who were known for their deadly and unique taijutsu. While a formidable opponent, Shikamaru doubted he would win against Naruto. He knew that Naruto was powerful, but he had the feeling that Naruto had yet to show what he was fully capable of. Speaking of, he looked around, trying to find his blonde friend. Him and Sasuke, both of them were absent from the lineup, as well as the audience stands. If they didn't arrive right now. Troublesome, he muttered. The proctor, a different one from the prelims, was standing in front of their lineup. A lazy one, from what he could see. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Chunin exam finals. I am Shiranui Ganma, the proctor of this stage. The matches will be as follows: Uzumaki Naruto vs Hyuga Neji, Uchiha Sasuke vs Sabaku no Gaara, Aburame Shino vs Sabaku no Kankuro, and Sabaku no Temari vs Nara Shikamaru. Turning his attention to the lineup, Ganma continued, "The rules are the same as preliminaries, however, whether you win or lose doesn't matter. Your promotion will be decided on the basis of your skill, your strategy, and execution." Stan Sakura looked worried as she tried to spot her two teammates. Ino, who was sitting next to her, said, "Where do you think are your teammates, Sakura?" While she still believed Sasuke would win the finals, she had gained a healthy amount of respect for the blonde Uzumaki, ever since she suffered the humiliating defeat at his hands. The ease at which he handled her told her how pathetic she really was. Also, it was evident just how much he was holding back from absolutely thrashing her. Sakura shook her head worryingly, "I don't know." "Where are you, Sasuke-kun, Naruto?" A sound coming from above the finalists caught hers, as well as every person's attention. Arena, the proctor, was just about to speak some more when a sound above them caused everyone, including the audience and the Kage, to look up. In a puff of smoke, a small object fell right in front of the assembled genin. It was revealed to be a kunai, but not just any kunai. A three-pronged kunai. There was a collective gasp among the audience when they recognized what it was. Danma had wide eyes as he stared at the kunai, being reminded of the only person in the entire nations who used to wield these. Before he could think anything else, a person appeared in a blue flash. A pin-drop silence washed over the entire stadium as everyone got a good look at the person. Kagebox Hiruzen stared in awe as the person was revealed to be just who he thought it would be. And Kami, he looked just like his father. "Minato, you would be proud of who he's become." Beside him, Orochimaru was seething. His fists were hidden from view, so that no one could see that they were clenched tightly. "Uzumaki Naruto, it is not possible for anyone to master that jutsu in just a month, which means you knew it well before, and you knowingly held back against me? Very bold." But then he smirked, "If you weren't the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, I would have marked you instead of Sasuke-kun. To have that jutsu in my arsenal, I would have been unstoppable." Everyone's eyes were at the point of bulging out when they saw the kunai used by their beloved yandame being thrown in the arena. Everyone had gasped collectively, and had jumped up on reflex when the person who had likely thrown the kunai had appeared. "It couldn't be it just couldn't be," were the thoughts of everyone. They were filled with disbelief, trying to deny what was right in front of their eyes. But no matter how much they wanted to, it was simply undeniable. Spiky blonde hair, which was no longer tied in a ponytail, but in a style that was painfully reminding them of a similar blonde. Two jaw-length spiky bangs, although tied beneath the headband and the bangs themselves tied around the middle, there was no mistaking just who the blonde Uzumaki resembled so much. He was almost a literal copy of Namake's Minato, with only his hairstyle distinguishing from the famous Hokage. The yandame couldn't return from the dead, which left only one conclusion. To think that the demon container was also the son of the yandame. The crowd exploded in mutters, exclamations of yandame, mostly drowning any other verbal exclamation. It was something that no one was expecting to see. No one knew that the yandame had a legacy, and now that they thought about it, it was right in front of their eyes all the time. Guilt began to creep into every Konoha villager about how they treated the boy, who was almost royalty considering just whose legacy he represented. Is that Naruto? He looks so hot. Ino cried out as she hungrily looked at Naruto. Then she closely looked at Naruto. While he had only changed his hairstyle, he closely resembled a person that was on the tip of her tongue. Sakura was beside herself as she gazed upon Naruto's new look with a slight blush. He looks almost as handsome as Sasuke-kun, if not more. Arena Naruto stood in a crouch, right hand grasping the handle of the kunai and eyes on the front, facing the genin assembled. He took in the expression of each of them. Shikamaru's narrowed gaze, Shino's raised eyebrows, Kankuro's frown, Temari's appreciative but slightly guarded gaze, Niji's narrowed eyes but otherwise neutral expression. But what put him on guard most was Gaara. Pulling out the lodged kunai with a slight jerk, he slowly stood up, maintaining eye contact with Gaara. Gaara's mouth almost twisted into a manic smile, but it was so quick that Naruto would have missed it if he were not looking for it. He stood up to his full height, towering full 4 inches above him. Without breaking eye contact, both of them seemed to size each other up. It was as if along with them, their bijou were also looking each other through their eyes. A new feeling washed over the assembled group. It was as if at first, there was an existing sensation of a contest between themselves. Temari and Kankuro knew that Gaara was the strongest among the 3 of them, and the genin from Konoha knew Niji was the strongest among them. It was a clash between both the groups. But with Naruto's arrival, it seemed that the purpose of the clash went utterly void, for here was a genin whose aura seemed to say that he already knew he was the strongest among them. The feeling was unsettling. Uzumaki, Gaara whispered, though it perfectly conveyed his bloodlust. Naruto did not change his expression, prompting Gaara to continue, "Mother cries for your blood." Naruto merely lifted an eyebrow and said, "She's going to have to wait." He then proceeded to stand next to Shikamaru, who turned an annoyed expression to him, "You're a troublesome guy, have I ever told you that?" Naruto smirked but said nothing. Ganma gazed at Naruto for a moment more, before turning his gaze and calling out, "Just to be clear, I'll say it one more time. The same rules apply as last time. Opponents continue to fight until one is either knocked out or unable to continue. I also reserve the right to stop the match when I see fit. With that said, the contestants of the first match will step forward. The others will proceed to the contestant stands to wait for their matches." Shikamaru patted Naruto on his shoulders and walked off to sit with the rest of the rookies. When the field cleared, it was just Niji, Naruto and Ganma who stood between the 2 fighters as the 2 sized each other up. "You should give up, Uzumaki. Fate has already decreed me to be the winner today," Niji broke the silence, informing Naruto as if what he said was fact, nothing more. Naruto smirked both at the squeals from the female audience and what he was about to say at him and replied, "Your eyes are said to be great, yet they can't even see that fate is not the proctor of this match, Ganma-sen is." Niji's eyes hardened, "Everything in life is set by fate, as is your defeat. But I can see you do not understand fate." Slipping into his stance, he continued, "Allow me to explain by demonstrating it to you." Ganma knew an opportunity when he saw it, and he swung his hand down in a slicing motion. "Hajime." Immediately jumping back, he made a half-ram seal. 8 clones popped into existence. "Go," he commanded. All of them moved in to engage. Niji did not seem alarmed at all. He calmly engaged the clones with controlled expertise, slowly but surely, dispatching them. Naruto observed that Niji's eyes never once moved in their sockets, always gazing forward. As the last of the clones was finished off, Niji was surprised a bit that another batch was already moving in to engage. But no matter, they would not win. Fate had decreed him to be the victor of this match. "Stands, what is he doing, using Kage Bunshin against Niji?" Asuma wondered, confused by Naruto's tactics. Alongside him, Kurenai and Guy also were wondering the same thing. If he knows the Hiraishin, he could have ended the match easily, so why isn't he? With Niji's Byakugan, any type of attack using clones wouldn't work because of his all-around vision, Guy put in his thoughts. Perhaps there is more to this match than just achieving victory that we are not seeing. A few seats away, the head and the heiress of the Hyuga clan watched the match with impassive expressions. Hayashi paid careful attention to the Uzumaki, who was intently studying Niji's fighting style. There was no doubt about it, Naruto was the son of his old friend, the Yondaime. Had he not known that Naruto knew the jutsu that made Namake's Minato so known, he would have been in favor of Niji's victory. But now, he felt like Naruto was setting Niji up for something. Like a predator playing with its prey, before finishing it off. He would have told Hanabi about his assurance of Niji's victory, but that was before he realized just who Niji was facing. He wisely chose to keep quiet. "Arena there," Naruto mentally exclaimed as Niji finished off the fourth batch of shadow clones. He waited for Niji to get his breath back as he prepared himself, setting into his stance. He found out all he needed to fight this match on his terms. Niji finished off the last clone and faced the original, all the while mentally cursing. While it took much longer than he estimated, he was able to finish all of them off. But that wasn't what surprised him. The clones, along with the original, didn't seem to have any chakra network at all. The Hyuga clan's taijutsu was largely based on attacking the tenketsu in the chakra network, cutting off the flow of chakra where they struck. However, the revelation that Naruto did not have a chakra network almost made his taijutsu null and void. It was almost like he was fighting blind. Almost. Along with learning the locations of the tenketsu, the Hyuga also learned the locations of various pressure points. With the option of striking the tenketsu out, he only had pressure points to rely on. While not as many as the number of the tenketsu, there were enough for him to strike. He turned to the original, watching him settle into a strange stance. He settled into his, knowing that Uzumaki Naruto had given him yet another reason, along with being the son of the Yondaime, to believe that he was a very dangerous opponent. "I presume you know that I am not a normal opponent by now," Naruto called out. Niji narrowed his eyes and deactivated them. "Indeed you are not. But that doesn't matter. Fate has spoken in my favor today, which is why you will lose." Naruto narrowed his eyes. "If you insist on believing so much in fate, then allow me to show just how fragile the concept of fate is." With that, he moved. Almost everyone, including most of the jonin in the stands, was perplexed as one moment Naruto was standing 10 feet away, and the next moment a foot was being barely blocked by the Hyuga. Many people thought that it was Hiraition. However, when Niji was sent skidding back from the force of the kick, they realized that Naruto had moved so fast that the momentum had augmented the force behind the kick, causing Niji to go skidding backwards. But Naruto had only started. Niji had barely begun to think when Naruto attacked again. He was shocked at just how fast and ruthlessly he was forced onto the defensive. As he tried to block the attacks, Niji had thought that Naruto's fighting style was focused more on the strength of the attacks, rather than speed. He was promptly proved when he failed to hide his winces when he felt the force behind each of the attacks. He moved by instinct as he attempted to redirect the force behind Naruto's attacks. The speed behind his attacks was nothing to scoff at as well. While the strikes had impressive force behind them, they seemed to be augmented by the sheer speed that Naruto was using to strike. Son of the Yondaime indeed. Only years of training in the martial art of his family and developing his instincts allowed him to dodge his attacks. Even then, he was dodging and blocking by instinct only. That wasn't the only problem. His hands were feeling unusually hot. Niji's thought process resulted in a punch slipping past his guard, right into his left cheek, and he found himself flying backwards from the force of it. He prevented from landing on his back by twisting himself mid-air and landing on his feet. His hand came up to tenderly rub the surprisingly, slightly burnt area as he narrowed his eyes, trying to figure out just how was Naruto defying fate. Kagebox Hiruzen was thoroughly impressed when he saw Naruto engaging Niji in taijutsu. Usually, it was considered suicidal to engage a Hyuga in taijutsu, but it seemed Naruto had no such qualms. Not just that, but his taijutsu was effective enough to put a Hyuga on the defensive. And it seemed he added his own touch to it, if the small burn on Niji's face was anything to go by. Most unpredictable ninja indeed. He pulled out a notepad, which he had brought to write points on which each genin qualified for the position. He wrote down something and kept it aside. "Your genin is quite impressive and bold, Hokage Dano. He must be very confident to engage a shinobi of the Hyuga clan in taijutsu," Orochimaru commented, playing his role as the supposed Kazekage. Hiruzen chuckled, I'm sure that this is only the beginning, Kazekage Dano. He will surprise us, of that I have no doubt. Mentally though, you don't give me the credit I deserve, Orochimaru. Don't think I don't know that it's you in those robes. The surprise was evident on the faces of the three jonin. Not every day you see a prodigal Hyuga being bested by the supposed dead last, now revealed to be the son of their late Hokage, in taijutsu. Guy was crying, shouting something about Naruto's youth, with Lee vehemently agreeing with him. Kamiya, is this really what he is capable of? Ino whispered in amazement and slight fear. She was suddenly, infinitely grateful that Naruto hadn't gone full force in their spar that day. If he had, she would have really been dead. Naruto. Sakura whispered in awe as she watched her teammate best one of the Hyuga at their own game. It suddenly became clear just how utterly huge the gap between their skills was. She couldn't even begin to see his movements, that's how fast he was. The first attack alone would have taken her out of the fight. A few seats away, Hinata watched with a slight smile as Naruto held his own against her prodigal cousin. Naruto-kun. Kiba, on the other hand, was shocked and almost jealous of the speed and skill Naruto was displaying. It made him think back to his own fight with the blonde, and he ruefully smiled at how easily he was beaten. He had grown up with Naruto, and if there was anything he could say for certain about the blonde, it was that Naruto never gave up. He could say without a doubt that Naruto had trained his ass off to reach where he is now. It sort of inspired him to become the same. After all, if Naruto could do it, why can't he? Arena Neji hid his wince as he kept his gaze on Naruto, slowly standing up. He evaluated on whatever he had experienced so far. There is no doubt that he is physically strong, almost on the same level as Lee. I'm willing to bet that he could withstand the amount of force he dishes in his attacks himself as well. And he is fast, unbelievably so. Nothing else would be expected of the son of the fastest shinobi to ever live, after all. I never knew that it was possible to have such impossibly fast reflexes. His fighting style is lethal, but in a way I have never seen before. Every fighting style has a focal point which it is based on. Gai-sensei's Goken is based on strength, Juken is based on precision. But his style seemingly incorporates strength, speed, flexibility, and precision. It's as if he can switch to any one of them if one proves to be inadequate against one opponent. Not just that, his movements are bizarre. He seems to have mastered the way to perfectly switch from one set of movements to another, without hesitation. His hands also feel as if they are on fire, burning any area of contact. Fully standing up, he took deep breaths to center himself. I'll have to avoid his hands and know, pretty much his every blow. Am I getting to you, with that fragility of your so-called fate? Naruto asked, and no one missed the sarcasm in his voice. Neji chose to ignore that, and instead asked, how did you manage to burn my face? Naruto rose his eyebrow in a way that strongly reminded Neji of himself. He raised his eyebrows that way when his teammates seemed to suggest an utterly stupid idea. So that's how it feels to be on the receiving side of it. He felt quite stupid, to be honest, and was a bit glad that he had a burn on his cheek, otherwise his blush would have been caught. What idiot reveals the secret of his or her technique, Baka? Naruto asked in a bored tone. Kagebox Hiruzen heartily laughed at the question. It was highly amusing when in his youth, his opponents seemed to spare him the thought process of trying to figure out their technique by revealing it on their own. It allowed him to create a counter-strategy quite easily. Instead of finishing him off, they seemed to choose to gloat about their techniques. What idiots! A very true question. Won't you agree, Kazekage Dano? Orochimaru forced out a chuckle, while he couldn't shake off the feeling that the old monkey knew it was him and was openly mocking him. I agree, Hokage Dano. Hiruzen smirked and turned back to watch what was turning out to be a highly entertaining match. So far, Naruto had only shown his superior prowess in taijutsu, and had yet to show something that qualified him for Chunin, except for keeping emotions under control. He had to keep his smirk from widening, for he was reminded of a younger Orochimaru, bragging about the secret behind the techniques he developed himself. What an idiot! Kiba shared the amusement with his Hokage, for he was laughing as well. He never knew Naruto had it in him to mock others. Hinata was trying to hide her giggles behind her hand. It would not do if her father caught her laughing at Naruto calling her cousin an idiot. Sakura and Ino shared no such restraints, and were full out giggling. The Jonin had mixed reactions. Asuma had snorted and had to catch his smoking stick from flying onto the head of the person in front of him. Kurenai was stifling her giggles like her student, not wanting to offend Guy for laughing at his student. Guy had an entirely different response. Instead of being offended on behalf of his student, tears came from his eyes and he clenched his fist. What a hip response! No doubt, you have passed your coolness onto your student, my eternal rival Kakashi. Needless to say, he entirely ignored insult on Neji, choosing to focus on how hip and cool Naruto's response was. Arena Neji was barely keeping himself from turning red in embarrassment at all the giggles in the stadium that were aimed at him as a result of Naruto's comeback. Naruto was entirely amused by the giggles resounding in the stadium, but chose to keep it to himself. No need to embarrass him any further. Time to continue the fight, this time with a bit of misdirection. Neji was already worn out and trying to reduce the feeling of stupidity in himself, so when Naruto suddenly disappeared from in front of him, he was caught unawares. Naruto grinned as a solid kick connected to Neji's left shoulder, sending him flying away from him for the second time in the fight. He twisted and landed on feet, but was given no time to recover as he engaged the Uzumaki in taijutsu yet again. He activated his Byakugan this time, watching out for Naruto's no doubt, Katan chakra enhanced hand strikes. But for some reason, Uzumaki's hands were lacking the chakra that was making them heated. So Neji jumped at the opportunity to block rather than dodge, all the while trying to find an opening. He also deactivated his eyes to conserve chakra. He would endure the punishing force for a short while. Maybe he should taunt him a bit. You are not fighting with your chakra-coated strikes as you were doing before, Uzumaki. He smirked as he saw Naruto narrowing his eyes. It seems this is where fate draws the line for you using that technique. He was shocked, however, when Naruto, instead of getting enraged like he wanted, snorted out loud. In a surprising maneuver, Naruto locked himself with Neji, holding him in place. As much as Neji tried, he would only move if he managed to overpower him. Yeah, not happening. Neji grunted as he tried to get out of the lock Uzumaki had put him in. But as much as he struggled, he could not move the limbs of the blonde. His face twisted in a snarl, and he locked eyes with Naruto, who had a neutral expression on his face. Whatever he was going to say was thrown out of the window at the blonde's words. Only a pansy like you would call misdirection as an act of fate. He saw it, but could do absolutely nothing to stop it. Futon, repushu. A clone, who had appeared beside them without any hand seals which caused a gasp to resonate through the shinobi part of the crowd, had enough compressed air in his hands to cleanly blow Neji away almost 20 meters. Naruto had released him from the lock at the very last second. While the force was enough to send him flying, it lacked a damaging component. But instead of feeling relief, Neji only felt dread. He had a feeling that Uzumaki had planned something much worse for him. Unlike the previous times, Neji failed to add grace to his landing and as such, rolled toughly onto the ground. Remembering that Uzumaki would not likely give him time to recover, he quickly got up to his feet, just in time to see 4 shuriken converging on him with deadly accuracy. He jumped to the side to avoid them, but was surprised by the blonde, yet again. So he decided to switch to long-distance attacks. This is good for me, for I might be able to use this window to recover a bit. But that thought was thrown out of the window in the next moment. Naruto had predicted in a split second where Neji would land, after he avoided those shuriken. So, he had cleverly threw 3 kunai, wrapped with explosive tags of his own design, to that spot. Neji grit his teeth as the kunai came closer and closer. It seems I'll have to use that. Naruto watched as the kunai almost hit Neji. His eyebrows raised in surprise when Neji suddenly spun, so fast that he wasn't even visible anymore, and was covered in a dome of his own chakra. Hakusho Kaiten. Naruto activated his exploding tags just as they reached Neji, and watched with a mix of curiosity and fascination that the dome of chakra spinning around Neji completely protected him from the resulting explosion. Stan's Hanabi turned to her father, "To-sama, isn't that dash?" "Yes," Hayashi replied instantly. His own eyes were narrowed as he clenched his fists. Kaiten is supposed to be the technique of the main house. How does Niji, a member of the branch house, know it so well? Arena Niji stopped spinning, and couldn't really hide the smugness from his voice as he saw the expression on Naruto's face. He could gloat later; right now, he would capitalize on this small window of opportunity. No need to use the Byakugan, for he knew exactly where to strike. Naruto had immediately created 5 clones to scope out Niji's new technique and find a weakness, but his opponent's words momentarily gave him a pause. "You are now in the field of my divination," Niji ominously announced. Not wanting to give Niji the chance of using this technique, 2 of them shot forward to engage him. But this time, Niji was ready, his hands moving in a blur. 2 palms, 2 clones gone. 4 palms. Another 2 gone. 8 palms. The last one tried to shield himself. Futile effort. Even if you have no tenketsu, the physical damage from the strikes alone will send you down. 16 palms. Naruto grunted as the hands slammed into him with considerable speed. 32 palms.